Over the past
The scandal behind Rick and Morty creator Justin Roiland. Roiland. I think Roiland, yeah.
few decades, the popularity of more adult animation on TV would consistently grow. And then adult animation seemed to explode when the traditional
Watched Fall of GTA's biggest rival. I will after this.
kid-friendly Cartoon Network began airing some pretty raunchy stuff after 11 p.m., eventually launching their Adult Swim slated programs that catered to a more mature audience with a filthy fucking sense of humor. We would see the rise of such cult hits as Aqua Team Hunger Force and Space Ghost Coast to Coast. But no show seemed to have true crossover success until December 2nd, 2013, when an animated series debuted that resembled a more adult version of Back to the Future. The show came from controversial figure Dan Harmon.
That was the original idea for Rick and Morty. Was literally the first episode ever. Like the original idea, there was a show. I think it was called Doc and Marty. Yeah, The Adventures of Doc and Marty. And it was literally like Doc and Marty McFly, but it was animated, and he would have Marty do sexual acts on him and like trick him and shit like that. It was like so dumb. You can look it up on YouTube. It's actually hilarious.
Harmon, who had recently been fired from his network series Community. Yet it would be the show's other creator that 10 years later would make headlines for his off-screen behavior. It's time we look into the scandalous controversy, or the controversial scandal, that is surrounding Rick and Morty, and its co-creator, Justin Roiland.
Hey, I'm hotshot voice actor Justin Roiland.
Any fan of Rick and Morty knows that it toes the line of what you can get away with on TV. The show has never shied away from going places in the name of comedy. But when some of the text messages that Justin had sent out to various women were released, some of those more nasty, controversial jokes got a little less funny, if you thought about it. Rick and Morty began its life as a short animated film, which was a direct parody of Back to the Future. Doc and Marty, Rick and Morty, get it? At the time, Dan Harmon had made a name for himself with live-action shows, such as the Sarah Silverman program, and of course,
Sarah Silverman's like kind of hot. You know what I mean? There's moments where she's hot and there's moments where she's not, but she's kind of hot.
Community. It would be during Dan Harmon's hiatus from Community, which was brought on because of his own highly publicized chaotic leadership approach, that Adult Swim would approach him to produce a new animated show for their network. Dan Harmon, having been a big fan of Justin Short, contacted the Doc and Marty creator, and the duo would transform the short into Rick and Morty. And yeah, Rick and Morty, it's a really interesting show. It'll gross you out, but it'll make you think. They perfectly play around with the science fiction genre, and yeah, it actually makes you think about, you know, the universe and how time works and things like that. It's a unique show that's very well written and has an interesting animation style. And I think a lot of us can agree that the worst part of Rick and Morty is its fan base and its creators. With the massive success of Rick and Morty, Justin would launch his own video game studio, Squanch Games, and his star would continue to rise for the next several years. On the outside, he seemed like an animation genius who would launch several successful endeavors, including art galleries that sold pieces for hundreds of thousands of dollars, including several NFTs. And as you know, there were video games and other successful shows such as Solar Opposites, which is also pretty dang funny and makes you think.
It's fucking hilarious.
And Koala Man, which I haven't seen. But internally...
Yeah, I haven't seen Koala Man. I always thought it was like, looked like some Rick and Morty stuff, but I never watched it.
The people that worked with him, and we'll use the term worked with him loosely, as many people say that even though Roiland was the co-creator and main vocal talent on these shows, they never actually worked with him. In an in-depth report from Hollywood Report...
They just trying to distance themselves from the accusations and scandals. I don't blame him though.
In 2023, several people said that besides the voice work, Justin Roiland has absolutely zero meaningful creative input on these shows, with many saying they haven't even heard from Justin in years.
Oh wow.
And several others saying that despite working on his shows, they never met him. For Dan Harmon, the relationship had gotten so strained that by the time the accusations against Justin were made public, the duo hadn't even spoken for several years. But
wow.
Harmon says it wasn't always like that. In the early days of Rick and Morty, they would have fun in the writer's room. Dan Harmon says that the writer's room would come up with a
Bro got, I don't know, I think bro something's going on with bro. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he's really one of those pedos, bro. You know what I'm saying? I think something was going on with him mentally. And I know what he did is not right, but I just think he made a bad decision. You know what I'm saying? I think bro was going through something crazy. I don't know, mentally, like a mental problem. You know what I mean? Obviously pedos have mental problems, but like I think something, like, I don't know what it was, but it could have been drugs, loneliness, you know, maybe drinking a lot, because he did drink while he was voice acting. People make dumb decisions. And I think he just made a dumbass decision. He should have never done that. He's a fucking, it's weird for doing that shit.
And Roiland would jump up immediately and start to draw it. It was an amazing working relationship. Until it wasn't. By season 2, Dan Harmon wanted to make the show even better, and brought in some of his community writers who apparently didn't treat Justin with the same respect as the first season writers did. On the one side, you had Dan
I think the first season was fucking a work of art.
Harmon and his team of writers who were all about breaking down the story and the narrative structure. And on the other hand, you had Justin's crew who were more animators who liked to just create zany, off-the-wall pieces of art. Sometimes it took a while to find a good balance between those two outlooks on...
That's probably why there was a few seasons that were kind of like, whatever, they're trying to gain their footing, you know what I mean? Makes sense.
The show.
Especially after the fallout with Justin Roiland.
That divide became more pronounced when Roiland would start sitting in different rooms for meetings. Season 3 would be when things seemed to take a turn for the worse.
Yeah.
As Roiland became so disassociated with the production of the show that oftentimes he simply didn't show up at all, with several sources saying that when he did show up, he would derail meetings so badly by talking about personal sexual things and other...
Yeah, bro he was getting weird, man. He's getting weird.
...non-productive topics that...
I think he has to have some sort of depression or something, and then like got into sexual shit to, you know, counteract the depression, and then the sexual shit got weirder and weirder.
That made even the writers of Rick and Morty uncomfortable. Eventually, Justin would stop coming into the office altogether and would just record his voice work from his home studio without any direction or input from the people making the episodes. It wasn't just Rick and Morty that Justin was bringing down, but his other shows, Solar Opposites and Koala Man. Despite being largely responsible for both shows, he simply stopped showing up to the writer's room. Roiland actually seemed to take some pride in his voice work, but on Koala Man, Justin Roiland was set to voice a character, but dragged his feet so much that the show almost missed its deadline.
Yeah, bro is probably depressed and on drugs, bro. Or drinking too much. Like, straight up, bro is like neglecting work. Yeah.
And the writers just decided to kill off the character at the end of an episode. Justin Roiland was a hero to many animation fans, and he would be asked to do press junket appearances where he would constantly show up under the influence if he even bothered to show up at all. But most of the time, this behavior was all laughed off by those in charge, because, you know, that's just what eccentric geniuses do. Behind the scenes, these shows were falling off the rails, but fans were none the wiser, as Rick and Morty maintained its schedule and received a massive 70-episode renewal in May of 2018, due not just to its successful ratings, but also the
Like, I'm glad they got new voice actors, you know what I'm saying? Just better quality of a show. They do a really good job too, the new voice actors. Like, I'm not mad about that. I know the fans were all like, "Oh no, fucking Justin Roiland, he did." I'm like, bro, it don't matter, man. The show's still good. It doesn't matter who voices it, as long as the show's still good to me.
Hundreds of millions
They
of
just gotta sound like the same, and that's it, you know.
dollars the tie-in merchandise was generating each year. Because
Yeah.
everywhere you freaking go, you see Rick and Morty on a hat or a t-shirt or a sticker or whatever. They're everywhere.
Yeah.
They have conquered this universe.
Rick and Morty. All new episodes begin Sunday,
good
July
show.
30th at 11:30.
And then came January 12th, 2023. And everything that was not exactly a secret but not public knowledge either finally came to mainstream attention when NBC News had an exclusive report that Roiland had been charged with felony domestic violence, along with false imprisonment, based off a complaint filed against the animator back in May of 2020.
Crazy.
Justin Roiland would plead not guilty, with his lawyers adamant that they would get the charges dismissed. From there, the floodgates opened and the personal life of Justin Roiland became not so personal
Private,
anymore.
yeah.
Reports of Justin Roiland using his fame to target fans of the show, many of whom were underage at the time, began surfacing.
See?
Fans from around the country said
Bro,
that
got
Justin
weird.
used their fandom to groom them by using his dark sexual humor as a way to disarm them. By January 25th, Roiland was dropped by Adult Swim.
Good.
With the company simply saying, Adult Swim has ended its association with Justin Roiland. While they maintained that Rick and Morty would actually continue with co-creator Dan Harmon, taking over as the sole showrunner. Shortly after, the rest of Justin's personal associations dropped him, including Warner Brothers, Discovery, Hulu, 20th Century Animation,
Yep.
while Squanch Games, the gaming company he founded, announced that he had resigned shortly after the charges were made public. In March of
He ruined his own
2023,
life.
just
Like, I don't get it, man. You know, I just don't understand it. Like, you don't need to go for anybody underage. You know what I'm saying?
as his lawyers
Find somebody of age, and that's it.
had promised, the charges against their client had been dropped due to insufficient evidence. Justin Roiland would release a statement.
Yeah, insufficient evidence, but he shouldn't be. He might have not done it, but he was still texting him. It's like some Dr. Disrespect type shit. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, still, it's just shouldn't have done it.
Saying that he was determined to move forward and focus on both his creative projects and restoring his good name. Of course, with everyone in town dropping him,
I'm sure you can go to a foreign country in like one of their networks. I'm sure they
he
could.
really didn't have any creative projects to work on. As on August 14th, 2023, Roiland's show Solar Opposites returned for its 4th season, with actor Dan Stevens taking over the lead role of Corvo. And they did it in a weird little sci-fi way that is either brilliant or stupid. I can't decide, because in this show, you know, they're aliens and they have all this crazy, wacky sci-fi technology, and they just like zap him or something, and they're like, now
Yeah.
you have a British accent, and that's how it's gonna be. And then they just move on. I don't know. What'd you think about that? Was that the way to handle it?
I think so. For Solar Opposite, it works. I've gotten used to it. I don't even notice it anymore. It's kind of funny. He doesn't sound like Rick though, you know, because he sounded like Rick. It was just how it was. But yeah,
Told you not to throw metal around here. We're going to be late to work. Stop buggering up.
he sounds like him, but British. It's
About.
funny.
As it would turn out, restoring his quote-unquote good name was also a bit of an uphill battle. As of
Yeah.
September of 2023, more allegations of sexual assault, grooming, and targeting of minors were reported by NBC News. This time, NBC News didn't just cite one incident, but rather a history of Roiland communicating with underage girls online, dating all the way
Weirdo.
back to 2013.
Bro
This
has issues, man. He need to go get help. That's what he needs to
time
do.
it wasn't a police report that
Lay off the alcohol and drugs.
was the smoking gun, but rather hundreds of explicit text messages that were released,
The man needs to go find Jesus, go to church, something. I don't fucking know. He needs to redeem himself, not for everybody else, just for himself.
which would
Because
paint
there's no redeeming that shit. You know what I'm saying? But he needs to go find peace within himself.
a picture of a sick, and sexually depraved, perverted human being. Some women claim that Roiland offered to meet up with them and pay for the bill, including the airfare, with some claiming that on these dates Roiland would force himself on them after supplying these underage girls with plentiful amounts of alcohol. And yeah, a few of these women admitted that they drank the alcohol of their own free will, but would also say that they never gave consent for anything sexual to happen, and that it was
when they're drunk they can't give consent legally, right? Isn't that the law? So
Roiland who took advantage
even
of
if they're of age, if they're drunk, they technically can't give consent. That's you can catch a rape charge if they're drunk and you have sex.
them
Kind of fucking
by
stupid,
knowing
but
the power dynamic between them, because these young girls idolized him, because they loved his cartoon. Some of these girls would quote-unquote consent to sexual activities with Justin, but would later text him saying that they felt they were pressured into these things, making it not consensual. And via apology text messages to these young women, Roiland would basically confess to all of this stuff. Another woman reported that she met up with Justin after he sent her a message on Tinder, and they went out on a date, and the date would end with him forcing oral sex onto her. The allegations against Justin Roiland continued. A fan would write on social media that they were huge.
I mean, okay, ladies. So I know he's a weirdo. Don't get me wrong, but if you meet up with a guy on Tinder, and you know what I'm saying, and he's famous or something, or what do you expect the date to go on Tinder? I mean, come on now. Yeah, come on now. What do you expect this guy was gonna want? He's gonna want that. You know what I'm saying? Come on.
Admirers of Rick and Morty. Justin would DM.
Come on now. And especially if you're underage, you shouldn't be meeting up with adults online. Just in general. For all you kiddos out there. Just if an adult messages you, tell your parents. You know what I'm saying? Don't reply to them, even if they're famous. Just don't do it. Because you're going to be taken advantage of. You're underage. You know what I mean? There's no adult in their right mind who has good intentions by messaging a minor online. You know what I mean? There's no good intentions at all.
them.
Because no adult in his right mind wants to meet up or hang out with a child. They just don't want to. That doesn't even sound fun. What are you going to do? Nothing. You can't go out and drink. You can't do anything together that's of legal age for an adult to do. So, there's no reason for a minor to hang out with an adult. You know what I mean?
Making small...
without their parents, knowing. You know what I mean? I'm going to say for, family friend or something like that. You're going to, a park, a theme park or whatever, or arcade, and you have other kids, that are present there too, or you're babysitting. That's another whole situation. But there's parental consent there. You know what I'm saying? They trust that person. If it's a random meet and greet, what the fuck? No, tell your parents. Don't ever do that, kids. Don't do that.
All talk about Rick and Morty before
be smart.
asking if they were 18. If they said no, he would call them, quote, jailbait, and continue speaking to them for years until they turned 18. At which point he would continue his line of
that's weird.
questioning that involved asking if they were into stuff, and then asking them to...
If they just turned 18, they're not into anything. They don't know what they're into. You fucking weirdo.
Send photos of stuff, and to meet up.
You're pathetic. Hey, to being pathetic.
So here lies the problem with Justin. Many of his encounters
Alcohol.
seem to have been kind of consensual in nature. The consensual nature of these encounters were not exactly black and white. They all felt preyed upon by a man they looked up to, a successful Hollywood animator who made a piece of entertainment they loved. Roiland...
you're not... If a guy who's successful Hollywood animator and you're a minor and he messages you, he probably wants to do sexual acts on you. There's no, hey, I'm gonna do fan service and hang out with you. You're lucky. Woo! Let's go do cool, fun stuff. And there's none of that shit. He's not getting paid to do it. There's no reason for him to do it. There's got to be something he wants out of that, and that's not something that's gonna be good. Not at
knew
all.
this and used that admiration that these young women had, and he would spend lavish amounts of money on them and then pressure them into sexual acts. This was his disgusting MO, and whenever one of those girls called him out on what he did, Justin was quick to apologize and then do it all over again. Today, he remains radio silent, since he last posted on Instagram after the charges against him were dropped, where he said he always knew the claims were false. When the later reports came out, with the photographic evidence including screenshots of the text messages, he remained quiet, and has not been seen in the public eye since. Season 7 of Rick and Morty would premiere on Adult Swim on October 15th, 2023.
I wonder if he's still getting royalties. He probably gets royalties. He probably does. I would want royalties if I was him. The fuck? I made the show. It's my art.
But for the first time in the show's history, the title characters were voiced by people who were not Justin Roiland. But there was still a bit of controversy as his name still appeared in the credits as the executive producer, a credit he would have for the remainder of the series, as he is a creator of the series, and the TV rules say that he has to get credit.
He has to get credit, yes. That's what
Even though he has absolutely nothing to do with Rick and Morty. So the
because he created it.
question now is, with all of these scandalous controversies or controversial scandals surrounding Justin Roiland, will we ever see another project bearing his name again? And do we want to? Hollywood can...
I think people do want to. This is my hot take. He makes very successful shows and video games. You know, you gotta separate the artist from the art sometimes, but I think people do secretly. I think there's some people that just don't give a fuck, for one. If he's not in jail, they don't care, but what he did was still wrong. But still, like, I think people, they want to see stuff from him. Like, nobody can capture his artisticness, you know, his artistry, like he does when it comes to creating shows and content, you know. And so, like, people want more shit like that. And if they want more shit like that, then they do want him to create something new, you know. But do I think he'll get support? I don't know. There's people still support Rick and Morty, even though, like, he has no involvement with it anyways. Like, I still like Rick and Morty. Rick and Morty's the shit to me. I love it. Like, I'm not going to stop watching it. You know what I mean? But, like, I don't think they're going to... I mean, they might have a good direction of making more shows in the style, like Solar Opposites and Rick and Morty, shit like that, style like that. I don't know about Koala Man, but they could probably make another show that's like it, another spin-off type show, or a different type of show. I could see that, but a whole new type of IP, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to pull it off without Justin's mind and you know, his train of thought and his creative input into it. But I don't know. I think people do want more shit from him.
can be a forgiving town.
And I bet you if they did, people will still watch it.
But the things that he did seem to be a step beyond a situation where you can be like, I got help and I'm better now. It's not one of those comeback stories that Hollywood loves. But who...
No. I don't think there is no I got help and I'm better now. I mean, he could do that. He does need to get help and get better now. You know, find Jesus. But he shouldn't be allowed around children or schools. And he should be banned off the internet.
Who knows? Maybe it can be, because anything can fucking happen here.
It's gonna be classic episodes, Morty. Portaling in, wrecking shit, portaling out, Morty. Oh my god, adventures, Morty. Social commentary, rude characters. Here we go, Rick and Morty time.
He is a man who helped create one of the best adult animated series of all time. But the truth is, when Season 7 of Rick and Morty premiered, many publications wrote that the series was doing just fine without any input from Justin Roiland. The guy made some good money selling
He's barely around, but yeah.
NFTs, and he will continue making money from Rick and Morty. But the scandalous controversies, or the controversial scandals that surround him, are just kinda too toxic for him to really make a true comeback anytime soon. And you know what? I don't think that matters much to Justin anyway. He seems to be the kind of person who doesn't give a f***.
He doesn't give a fuck. Is he still getting paid from the show? He's gonna be doing what he does. He should be on the watch list though for sure.
But what did we learn here? Well, things we already knew. The tides are turning in this business of show, and the monsters and the creatures, well, they're coming out of the shadows. And I guess the only good thing about these kinds of stories is that maybe, in the future, the next generation of animators will think twice about sending messages to, well, children.
I think everybody should be should like not send like nobody, not everybody, but nobody should send messages to minors. Come on now, you're an adult. Don't do it. It doesn't matter if you're an animator or not. Like, it's fucking weird, man.
And only jump in the pool during Adult Swim, like in real life, and as a metaphor, and you get it.
Yeah. Oh, that was a good video. Sources: TMZ, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, IMDb, Hulu, Roiland.com.